A storm brought her in. A secret kept her silent. A chip tried to control her, but a look, just one look, between Clara and the trembling dog, sparked something no science could explain. Luna wasn't just a pet. She was evidence. She was a survivor. She was the result of a question mankind keeps asking. Can we shape life without destroying its soul? And now, with agents closing in, memories waking, and the world beginning to care, the only question left was, would they let Luna choose for herself, or would someone try to rewrite her one last time before we begin this unforgettable story? Would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments and if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you? Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. Little Elk, Montana. The wind writes in white. The snow came sideways in Little Elk, a speck of a town cradled in the belly of the Bitterroot Mountains, where the wind screamed like a creature trying to claw its way through the valley. Power lines trembled. Trees stood like statues glazed in glass, the kind of storm that made people stay home and light candles, and even the wolves huddled in silence beneath their dens. It was the third week of January, and nothing moved unless it had to. Clara Hastings had to. At 28, Clara was the only veterinarian within a 40-mile radius. A woman whose gentleness was measured not in words, but in how she touched an injured paw, or whispered to a feral cat with rabies foam on its chin. She was tall, with lean limbs hardened by winters like these. Her chestnut hair was always tied back in a tight braid that trailed down her back like a cord anchoring her to the earth. Years ago, she'd dreamed of working in a big city clinic, maybe Seattle or Boston, but those dreams faded the day her mother died in a hit-and-run no one cared enough to solve. After that, Clara disappeared into the quiet corners of the world, first her grief, then Little Elk, that night. She'd been delivering antibiotics to a dairy farm on the southern ridge when the blizzard closed in. Her battered Subaru fishtailed through drifts taller than the hood. That's when she saw it just off the side of the road, beside an old, sagging barn that had long since surrendered to the weather. A flicker of movement. Gold. Against the blue-white world, Clara stopped. What she found under the eave was a dog, not just any dog, but a golden retriever, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with a coat dulled by dirt and cold. Her fur had once been honey-rich, but now it clumped in wet tangles around her legs. Her ribs showed faintly through her sides, and a patch of frost clung to her whiskers. Yet her eyes... Clara would remember those eyes forever wide, unblinking, and shining in the dark like they held something sacred. She didn't growl, didn't whine. She simply watched Clara approach. "Hey, girl," Clara murmured, kneeling slowly. "What are you doing out here?" The dog didn't move. Clara offered her a gloved hand, but the dog flinched when the snow slid off the roof above them and splashed onto the icy ground. She backed herself tighter against the wooden wall, shivering violently. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a collapsible water dish, filling it from her thermos. The dog only stared. Not a single lick, and when Clara tried again this time with a touch of beef broth to tempt her, the dog recoiled like she'd been shown a weapon. That was when Clara knew this wasn't just a stray. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She named her Luna on the way back into town. There was something lunar about her, aglow in the stillness. A silence that begged to be understood. The dog sat silently in the passenger seat, not even glancing out the window. Clara wrapped her in a wool blanket and talked to her the whole way home, as if words could build trust where trauma had stolen it. When they arrived at her modest clinic nestled between the post office and a snow-buried diner, Clara carried Luna inside and tried once more to give her water. Nothing. The faucet hissed, and the dog stiffened. Clara turned it off quickly. Later that night, in exam room 1 beneath the overhead lamp that buzzed faintly with the storm outside. Clara lifted Luna's head gently and pried open her mouth to check for dental issues. Then she froze, embedded in the upper palate, tucked so deep it was almost missed. Was something metallic, not a broken tooth, not a fragment of bone, but something artificial, glinting under the light like a whisper waiting to be heard. She stepped back. Her breath came out in a fog that had nothing to do with the cold. "Luna! What did they do to you?" Meanwhile, across town in the brick and glass office of the Little Elk Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Ben Whitmore stood staring at a blackened photo pinned to a board. The fire had happened 3 nights earlier at the Carson Research Annex, a private lab no one knew existed until it went up in flames. The place had burned so hot, the snow around it had turned to steam. What remained were cinders, twisted metal, and files no one seemed in a rush to recover. Ben was a war veteran turned sheriff. Mid-40s with silver peppering his temples and a limp in his right leg from an IED in Fallujah. People said he had a good heart, but a haunted look in his eyes, like he'd seen too much of what people did to each other when no one was watching. The fire report had come across his desk, along with a note closed by state order. That was all. But Ben had been a detective once, and instincts didn't retire with the badge. Something about the timing bothered him. The lab, the fire, and now, earlier that morning, a report from a farmer about strange tire tracks near that same property. Nothing official to chase, but enough to light a fuse. As the storm howled around the sheriff's office, Ben scribbled a name on a notepad, Carson Labs. Who funded it back at the clinic. Clara stitched a blanket nest on the floor of the kennel room and laid Luna down. The storm beat against the windows like an animal begging entry. But the room was warm, lit by soft yellow lamps and a space heater that hummed like an old lullaby. Clara sat beside Luna long after midnight, watching her breathe. The dog had not barked, had not slept. She just endured. And as Clara closed her eyes beside her, she made a quiet promise, "I don't know who hurt you, but they're not going to touch you again." By morning, the storm had dulled into silence. Snow blanketed Little Elk like a heavy breath held too long. Everything moved slower in the aftermath, trucks crawling through drifts. Townsfolk digging out porches in thick wool gloves, and Clara Hastings standing in the center of her clinic, eyes fixed on the kennel where Luna lay, curled, golden fur twitching with shallow sleep. The discovery from the night before gnawed at her. That metallic glint lodged in Luna's mouth wasn't natural. It wasn't veterinary. It didn't belong. Clara knew when she couldn't explain something with anatomy or logic, it was time to ask for help. And there was only one person she trusted for something like this. Dr. Malcolm Reyes. He was her mother's brother, and once a leading field surgeon in Colorado Springs. He retired early after a malpractice suit nearly took his license-wrong dosage on a sedated cougar during an emergency transport. The animal survived, but the noise that followed cracked something in him. He'd moved to Little Elk to disappear, or maybe to stop the noise. Living alone in a log cabin with too many books and too much silence. To most. He was a ghost. To Clara, he was the closest thing to family she had left. She called him. 3 hours later. Malcolm pulled into the icy lot of the clinic in a dark green Jeep held together more by memory than mechanics. He stepped out with a slow, deliberate gait, tall and thin, with white hair and an untamed halo around his ears. His coat was long and canvas brown, dotted with frost, and his eyes, blue-gray like slate, never missed a detail. He looked at Luna once, and nodded. Upper palate, he asked. Clara nodded. She won't drink. She won't bark. But there's something there. He didn't ask more, just rolled up his sleeves. The surgery suite was warmed with a space heater and thick towels. Clara prepped the instruments while Malcolm sterilized the gloves. Luna, sedated, lay on her side with a soft rise and fall to her chest. For a moment. The room felt like any ordinary procedure, like they were just two vets handling a case of a cracked tooth or abscess. But when Malcolm angled the light and used a thin scope to peer into the upper roof of Luna's mouth, he froze. "There," he said softly. "Metal. Circular. Not dental grade. You see the micro-etching?" Clara leaned closer. The chip, if it was a chip, was no bigger than a fingernail, but it pulsed, subtly, like it was breathing, or listening. Malcolm worked quickly. A clean incision, controlled suction, steady hands. The object came free without excessive bleeding. He placed it gently in a stainless steel tray. The room hummed. No, not the room. The chip. It gave off a soft, high-pitched vibration, so faint Clara could barely hear it, but she could feel it in her teeth. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Malcolm didn't answer. He pulled out a metal lid and covered the tray. The humming dulled immediately. Luna stirred, but didn't wake. They stitched her up cleanly. Malcolm's hands never once shook. An hour later, Luna drank. Not much at first, just a hesitant lick at Clara's hand. Then the water bowl, then more. By evening, she rested with her head on Clara's lap, her tail thumping once against the floor. "You see that," Clara murmured, eyes stinging. "That's something coming back." But Malcolm didn't smile. He held the tray with the chip like it might still bite him. "I've seen military-grade implants," he said, "but this is clean, too clean, and it reacts to temperature." Clara blinked. "How do you know I held it?" he said, and it got louder. She stared at him. "You think this is a tracker?" Malcolm shrugged. "Or something worse. Depends who put it there." Meanwhile, across town, Ben Whitmore stood beside the gas station on Route 12, boots crunching in wet snow. He was talking to a man in his 50s named Curtis Langley, a part-time snowplow driver who always wore denim overalls no matter the weather and had a permanent squint like he'd never quite trusted sunlight. Curtis lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "I saw it. Ben," he said, "right after the fire. Big black truck, parked near that old barn, no plates. You get a look at the driver?" Ben asked. Curtis shook his head. Didn't get out, just sat there for about 15 minutes. Then turned off his lights and backed out like he was never there. Ben wrote it down. He already had a lead from earlier that week. A woman had reported seeing a strange logo on a trailer near the Carson property. An eagle with outstretched wings, surrounded by stars. Not government-issued, but familiar. Now, with Curtis's black truck, the picture was forming. Ben went back to his office and ran the description through an old contact at the county archives. The result came back in an hour. Sentinel Dynamics. A private defense contractor known for drone development and experimental behavioral programs in conjunction with the Shadow Division of the U.S. Army. Most of their work had been buried in non-disclosure agreements and redacted funding reports. But Ben had once worked security for a forward operating base in Kandahar. He knew how this game worked, and what he'd seen there, the training dogs that never barked, never flinched, came back like a flash flood. He poured himself a coffee and wrote one word on his desk notepad owned back at the clinic. Luna rested in a nest of blankets. Clara sat nearby with a notebook open and a shaky hand sketching the shape of the chip from memory. Malcolm had left an hour earlier, taking the metal object with him in a lead-lined box meant for expired X-ray plates. He said he'd run a few tests at home, though Clara wasn't sure what kind. She'd never seen him look so quiet. Outside, snow fell again, light this time, like a dusting of ash. Luna lifted her head. Clara reached out and, for the first time, the dog leaned into her palm. The morning sun in Little Elk offered no warmth. It shimmered weakly through the frost-laced windows of Clara's clinic, its rays stretching long shadows across the tiled floors. Outside, snow clung stubbornly to the branches. Inside, Luna lay beside the front desk on a padded fleece mat. her head resting on her paws. Eyes half closed but not asleep. Clara had noticed that Luna never truly slept. Not fully. She dozed with one ear turned toward the door, like some part of her was always listening, waiting. Clara had barely finished her first cup of coffee when the bell above the clinic door jingled. The man who stepped in looked harmless enough, mid-40s, medium build, with a sun-leathered face and a windbreaker that bore the faded emblem of a local wildlife rescue organization. His boots were scuffed, his jeans stiff with mud, and his gloves clutched a clipboard. His smile was the practiced kind, wide but not warm. "Dr. Hastings," he asked. His voice was low, even-toned. "Heard you had a stray in pretty rough shape. Name's Dan Everett. I'm with North Creek Animal Recovery." Clara didn't smile back. Something about his tone didn't match the room. Word travels fast. Dan chuckled. "Small towns. Doc? And your girl there?" He tilted his head toward Luna. "She fits the description of a missing animal from a site we were asked to investigate. Brought in by accident. Probably tagged as a rescue." At the word tagged, Luna lifted her head. Her entire body tensed. Clara saw it instantly. The stillness in Luna's posture hardened into something sharper, like a coiled spring. Then, for the first time since she had come to the clinic, Luna growled. It was low, deep, and not a warning. It was memory rising. Dan took a slow step back. Clara moved between them. "She's not going anywhere." Dan's smile didn't fade, but it froze. "I just need to verify ownership. There's a protocol she's not chipped anymore." Clara interrupted. "And even if she was, she's under my care. You can leave." There was a beat too long before Dan nodded. "All right, just doing my job." He handed her a folded pamphlet with the organization's logo on it. "If you change your mind." He left. Clara locked the door behind him and pulled the shades. Then she turned back to Luna, who hadn't moved. Her body trembled. Her eyes locked on the door long after it had closed. Clara sat beside her, hand on her neck. The growl had stopped, but the message lingered. That night. Clara stayed late at the clinic. She told herself it was to update Luna's post-op records, but truthfully, she didn't want to leave Luna alone. Malcolm had taken the chip home to run low-frequency scans, and the clinic felt emptier without him. Around midnight, as snow began to fall again, Clara curled up on the cot in her office. Luna rested near the door. The building was dark, quiet except for the soft buzz of the exit sign above the rear hallway. Then came the click. Subtle. Mechanical. Clara's eyes snapped open. The security alarm didn't go off. There was no crashing glass, just a soft whirring sound, followed by the faintest creak of floorboards. She rose silently, reached into the drawer beside her, and pulled out the flashlight she kept for power outages. In the hallway. She saw it, the supply room door ajar. She turned the light on. The back cabinet had been opened. The box where Malcolm had stored his notes was empty. She checked the fridge, the backup vial where she'd sealed a swab of the chip's surface gone. Someone had been here. Luna stood beside her now, alert but silent. Clara checked the door locks again. The deadbolt was still set. The security camera in the hallway was turned off. Clara sat heavily in her chair. Her hands were shaking. Whoever had come had known exactly what they were looking for. Elsewhere in town, Sheriff Ben Whitmore was awoken by the ringing of his personal phone. Not the department line, not the radio, the number only 2 people still used. He answered. Whitmore. The voice on the other end was grainy, robotic. It wasn't real. She remembers. It said, "The Golden One. They'll come for her." Then it hung up. Ben stared at the screen. No number. No trace. He got dressed and went to the station, inside his office. He opened the file he'd started compiling photos from the Carson fire, printouts of the Sentinel Dynamics registry, copies of blacked-out invoices billed to federal contracts. Now he added a new page, a printout from a civilian drone enthusiasts forum, posted anonymously 3 months earlier. With a grainy image of a dog strapped to what looked like a neural capture rig, it was labeled Subject G07, Deployment Failure. He looked at the picture. He wasn't sure. But the ears, the coat, everything about it felt too close to Luna. By dawn. Clara sat in the clinic with Luna beside her. She hadn't slept. She had filed a police report under attempted break-in, but hadn't mentioned the chip, when Ben showed up just after 7, dark circles under his eyes. Clara simply handed him the footage from her backup camera, one he hadn't known existed, hidden inside a ceiling vent. The footage showed a man in gloves and a full mask entering through the back, bypassing the alarm, moving straight for the storage unit, and taking only the sealed box. He left in under 2 minutes. Professional. Ben muttered. Didn't touch anything else? I think Luna knew he was coming, Clara said. She never barked. She just watched. Ben sat down, the weight of what he suspected now almost too heavy to voice. I got a call. No name. Just this, the golden one, remembers. Clara looked down at Luna. The dog looked back. Calm, steady, and silent. They didn't want to track her, Clara whispered. They wanted to erase her. The road out of Little Elk was a vein of shadow beneath the stars, slick with thawed snow and silence. Clara gripped the wheel of her Subaru with white-knuckled focus, her breath fogging in the cold, and beside her sat Luna. Golden fur faintly illuminated by the dashboard glow, eyes fixed on the dark. Ben Whitmore followed close behind in his rusted sheriff's truck, a silent guardian in a world that had turned uncanny. They didn't speak much during the drive. There wasn't much to say. After the break-in and the message, Clara had packed her files, emergency gear, Luna's blanket, and the lead-lined case with Malcolm's handwritten notes. Ben had left a message on the department line, "Gone fishing. Be back when the world makes sense." Then they left Little Elk behind, heading northwest, toward Malcolm's cabin near Flathead Lake, a place Clara had visited once as a child, a refuge carved into the trees and stitched into her memory. The cabin sat at the edge of the forest, tucked into the curve of the lake like a secret. It was built from stone and aged pine, with a deep porch and a wood stove that hissed like it remembered every winter that had tried to take it. Malcolm had stocked it with supplies, lanterns, firewood, dried food, and an old ham radio that still crackled when the weather was right. Luna jumped out before the car fully stopped. She sniffed the air, ears twitching. Clara unlocked the door, flipped the breaker, and bathed the small interior in amber light. Ben set his bag by the hearth without a word. He seemed more tired than usual, not physically, but morally, like something he'd always believed about the world had quietly died in the back of his mind. Later that evening, Luna started barking. It was sharp, singular, not a call, not a warning. It was discovery. Clara ran to the front porch. Luna stood at the edge of the wooden steps, nose low, tail stiff, body alert. Beneath the steps, half buried under packed earth and pine needles, was a box small, black, with a blinking red diode barely visible under grime, a tracking device. Ben crouched beside it, gloved hands careful. They know where she is. No, Clara said softly, watching Luna. She knew where they were. They dismantled the box and burned the pieces in the fire. Ben swept the porch clean. Luna lay by the door the entire time, her eyes watching the tree line like something old waited there, something that once told her who to be and when to move. That night, Clara emailed a secure message to Heather Albright, an old college roommate now working in a lab out of Seattle. Heather was a cybersecurity engineer with a specialty in signal encryption. Fiercely intelligent with a dry wit and a love of overly strong coffee, she was 5'2", always wore black, and had once hacked a parking meter out of boredom. The two hadn't spoken in over a year, not since Heather moved into defense contracting, but Clara had no one else who could understand the chip. She sent the data logs, the signal readings, and the notes Malcolm had made. Then she waited. Heather called the next morning. "Clara," she said, voice crackling through the cabin's patchy reception. "What the hell did you just send me?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "That's why I need you." Heather's tone shifted. "This isn't just a tracker, it's adaptive. The signal changes based on environmental input light. Sound, movement. We've only ever theorized tech like this. Military-grade neurosignal feedback. Clara. Like training a brain through rhythm, not command." "Is it controlling her?" Heather paused. "Not exactly. It's not giving commands. It's responding, like it's learning how she reacts. Then optimizing behavior through repeated exposure. This isn't just a leash, it's behavioral engineering." Clara said nothing. Heather lowered her voice. "Where did you find this dog I didn't?" Clara said. "She found me." That same day. Ben sat on the back porch with a battered notepad in his lap. He had spent the morning making calls, quiet ones, to contacts from before Little Elk, before Montana. One name had come up again and again. Whispered and dodged Elliot Grange. Grange had once been a researcher with the Advanced Behavioral Analysis Unit at a federal lab in New Mexico. 10 years ago. He vanished after the ethics board shut down Project Ansel, a rumored program focused on neuroconditioned animals for covert operations. Officially, Grange was dead. Unofficially. Ben had just found an active utilities registration under that same name for a property near the Idaho border. He called the FBI. They put him on hold, then disconnected. Ben tossed his phone onto the porch railing and stared at the woods. They were alone. That night. Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by the wood stove, watching Luna breathe. The dog slept more now. Not fully, but longer. She didn't flinch as much, didn't startle at wind or creaking floorboards, but Clara couldn't stop thinking about Heather's words behavioral engineering, signals, reprogramming. Who had decided Luna was a tool? She opened her laptop and drafted a message to Heather. If something can be reprogrammed, can it also remember who it was before? She didn't hit send. The question felt too human. The air over Flathead Lake had turned heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Clara stood near the cabin's back door, her arms crossed against the cold, watching the moon cast thin silver ribbons across the frozen lake. Luna sat beside her still, alert, golden fur brushed with frost. Since the device under the porch had been destroyed, Luna's behavior had changed again. She slept deeper. Her tail wagged more, but every so often. She would lift her head, ears twitching, eyes locked on something Clara could not see. Inside. Ben monitored the shortwave radio Malcolm had left behind. It hissed and crackled in bursts, then went silent. He had a pistol in his belt. Though he hadn't admitted to Clara where it came from, he had the look of a man counting possibilities. None of them good. That morning, a package had arrived by courier. No return address. Inside was a small matte black collar, with an interface too sleek for consumer tech. A note, written in Heather's sharp handwriting, read, EMF Disruptive Field Collar. Not a blocker. It scrambles outbound pulses. You've got 24 to 48 hours before they realize she's off-grid. Clara fitted it gently around Luna's neck. The dog didn't resist. When the clasp clicked shut, Luna exhaled a slow, full breath as if she'd just come up from underwater. She's stabilizing, Clara said, watching her. Whatever was influencing her, it's dull now. Ben nodded but didn't look convinced. Let's hope it stays that way. By dusk. The trees went still. Clara was by the fire reading Malcolm's field notes when Luna began to pace. First small circles, then longer lines between the front and back doors. Her ears were pinned back. She growled once, not loudly, but deep in her chest. "What is it?" Clara asked. Ben moved to the window and pulled the curtain back. His shoulders tightened. Headlights. 3 vehicles. He didn't wait for permission. He turned to Clara. "We're going underground." Clara grabbed her pack, the laptop with Heather's data, and Luna's leash. Ben took the drive from the safe Malcolm had hidden beneath the floorboards, a backup of every signal test, every recording, together. They followed Luna to the far end of the hallway, where a trap door beneath a ragged bearskin rug opened to a cellar, and in the corner of that cellar, behind an old stack of firewood, was the tunnel. It was narrow, dug by hand decades ago by Malcolm just in case, lined with timber and electric lanterns wired to a backup battery. The tunnel sloped downward, then twisted west toward the ridgeline. Luna took the lead. She moved quickly but carefully, nose low, her body taut with instinct. Behind her, Clara and Ben followed in silence, the only sounds their boots scraping dirt and the creak of shifting wood above them. Halfway through, they heard the first crash front door kicked in, then voices, sharp, authoritative, too calm to be local. "Time's up," Ben muttered. They emerged into a thicket behind the ridge just as a sharp burst of gunfire rang out measured. Suppressive, not random. Luna froze. Then, to Clara's horror, she bolted. "Luna," she whispered sharply. But Luna didn't run from the gunfire. She ran toward it. "She's drawing them away." Ben realized. "Buying us time." "No," Clara said, heartbreaking. "She's choosing again." They didn't wait. They circled down to the tree line and crossed the frozen creek, reaching the old ranger outpost Malcolm had once used as a wildlife observation post. From there, Ben activated the data relay Heather had included in the package, a flashpoint signal that sent all files to 3 encrypted news outlets and a secure server overseas. It was now or never. They transmitted everything. The following 72 hours were a blur. The data went public. A group of investigative journalists from an independent network, the Rook Dispatch, verified the footage. Files and signal reports. Headlines exploded across national outlets. Behavioral weaponization of canines confirmed. Private defense firm under fire for human rights violations. Golden witness may hold key to military project. Protests erupted. Whistleblowers emerged. Anonymously at first, then by name. Heather appeared on national TV under a pseudonym, confirming the chip's potential as a remote conditioning device. Senators called for inquiries. Agencies denied involvement. But the most powerful image was one the public couldn't shake, a still shot of Luna, standing beneath the pines, wearing the black collar, eyes focused beyond the camera, calm, awake. They called her the Golden One. 3 days after the leak. Luna returned. Clara was back at the clinic, exhausted but refusing to sleep. When she heard the familiar scratch at the door, she opened it slowly. Luna stood there, mud on her legs, fur matted with pine needles, a small gash above one eye, but she was alive. Clara dropped to her knees and held her, no leash, no command, just the warmth of fur and breath and a bond that had never needed language. "You came back," she whispered. "You chose us." Weeks passed. Clara adopted Luna formally. Not that paperwork could contain what they had already become to each other. The clinic reopened, though visitors came now not just for pets, but to meet her. Luna didn't bark often. She flinched at loud sounds, avoided sinks, and stared at running water too long. But she also wagged her tail when schoolchildren came to read beside her, and nuzzled Clara's hand when the days were long. Ben stayed in Little Elk. He was quieter now, more grounded. He spent mornings walking the perimeter of town, afternoons at the station, and evenings writing his own account of everything the news hadn't told. He never got an answer about Elliot Grange. No one did. But every time he looked at Luna, he knew what mattered had already been said. And some nights, under the stars above Flathead, Luna would lift her head and look at Clara with that calm, golden gaze, not asking for anything, just reminding her I chose this. Sometimes, the miracles we search for don't come in blinding lights or loud voices. They come in quiet eyes, in trembling paws, in the silent choice of a soul that refuses to be broken. Luna was more than just a dog. She was a reminder that even those who have been used, hurt, or abandoned can rise not because someone saved them, but because deep inside, they still believe in love, in goodness, in the voice of something higher calling them home. Perhaps it wasn't just science that failed to control her, it was grace that set her free, in a world filled with noise, manipulation, and fear. May we all learn from Luna to trust the right voices, to walk toward the light, and to choose kindness even after cruelty. Sometimes, what saves us isn't a program, a plan, or a person, it's faith. Faith that we're more than what we've endured, that we're seen, and that we're never truly alone. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below, tell us how Luna's journey inspired you, and if you believe in second chances. Type Amen in the comments to show the world that faith still matters. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories of courage and redemption. And may God bless you and everyone who chooses compassion over control. Amen.